Hello, my name is Andrea Lypka. On behalf of the American Association of Applied Linguistics, I would like to welcome you all to our webinar today and hope you find these resources and tips very useful to your professional development. The title of today's webinar is Diverse Pathways in Applied Linguistics Preparing for the Job Market. The webinar is an hour and a half long and it is being recorded. We will post the recording on our website in a couple of days and we will let you know about this on social media. Allow me to first introduce the four panelists and then proceed to today's agenda. Our first panelist is Dr. Daniel Ginsberg. Dr. Ginsberg is Manager of Education, Research and Professional Development at the American Anthropological Association and Anthropologist in Residence at American University. His research investigates anthropologists' career in academic, business, government, and nonprofit settings, as well as anthropology education at graduate, undergraduate, and pre-university levels, and supports the association's professional development and public outreach initiatives. Trained in social cultural linguistics and education, Dr. Ginsberg has also written about classroom discourse, educational linguistics, and critical pedagogy. Our second panelist is Dr. Lara Hamman-Ortiz. Dr. Hamman-Ortiz is currently a postdoctoral research associate with the Bueno Center for Multicultural Education and the Department of Educational Equity and Cultural Diversity within the School of Education at the University of Colorado-Boulder. She is also part-time faculty with the English as a New Language program within the Alliance for Catholic Education at the University of Notre Dame. In this role, she teaches graduate-level courses on second language acquisition, supports two-way immersion program development, and leads professional development workshops. Her research explores how to effectively and equitably support language and literacy learning in bilingual classrooms. Our third panelist is Ms. Katlyn Thomas. Ms. Katlyn Thomas graduated from Kent State University in 2016 with a bachelor's in teaching English as a second language. In 2019, she went on to receive her master's in TSL from Kent State. Since then, she has focused on teaching internationally through various means. She has been teaching Chinese children English through online lessons with a company called GoGo Kid. She also teaches adults from all over the world through her online company, Landscape. Ms. Thomas currently lives in Bandung, Indonesia, where she teaches EFL, TOEFL, and SAT preparation to high school students at a private school. And last but not least, our fourth speaker is Dr. Bedrettin Yazan. He currently works as an assistant professor of educational linguistics at the Department of Curriculum and Instruction at the University of Alabama. He has experience in teaching English as a foreign language in Turkey and educating teacher candidates of world languages, English as a second language, and content area courses. His research interests include language teacher learning and identity, collaboration between ESL and content area teachers, language policy and planning, and world Englishes. I would like to welcome to our panelists, and next I would like to talk about today's agenda. Today's webinar is about academic and non-academic job search for international students, master students, and doctoral students. As you can see from our agenda, it is 60-minute long panel presentations, and you can see the topics on the side. So the topic range from career diversity to professional branding, job interviews, campus visits for international candidates, and professional documents for employment such as academic cover letter and CV. This webinar includes 60-minute presentations and Q&A session that is 20-minute long. During the webinar, please submit your questions through the Q&A pad so that we can compile them and have them ready for our panelists. Again, if you have questions, please use the Q&A pad or the chat box so that we can address your questions after the presentations. After that, we will open the session for those who would like to ask questions using their microphone. Before we start our webinar, I would like to remind you to complete our post-webinar survey that we will share on our social media. Just a brief review about the webinar etiquette and instructions. If you can't hear anything, you will want to go down here and unmute yourself, check the audio settings, or simply restart your computer. We ask panelists to please mute your microphone after you spoke. And then otherwise, if you have questions, please use the Q&A pad or the chat box to ask our team your questions. Our team consists of Josiah, Jackie, Eunice, and myself. Feel free to let us know if you have questions. Again, if you have questions for the panelists, please submit them to the Q&A pad. Next, I would like to introduce the organizers of the webinar. The organizers are social media subcommittee members. Myself is Andrea Lypka. I am in the doctoral program, Second Language Acquisition and Instructional Technology at the University of South Florida. And I am excited to be the moderator of this webinar. Our next organizer is Jackie Ridley. Jackie is a PhD candidate in foreign, second, and multilingual language education at The Ohio State University. Our third organizer is Yi Wong, a PhD candidate in East Asian Studies and Second Language Acquisition and Teaching at the University of Arizona. Our fourth organizer is Josiah Murphy. Josiah is an MA student in teaching English as a second language at Kent State University. Last but not least, our final organizer is Eunice Yunyang Nam. She is a PhD student in Applied Linguistics and ESL at Georgia State University. After our presentations, let's jump to our first topic and invite Dr. Daniel Ginsberg to talk about career diversity for PhD students. Dr. Ginsberg, please share your screen.
Graduate student leadership when I was in school, and so it's really exciting to be involved with this again and talking to all of you about a topic that was always important to me. So I'm glad I get to share it with all of you. There we go. Can everyone see my slides?
Yes.
Excellent. So I guess by way of starting things off, as Andrea mentioned, I am working at the American Anthropological Association, and depending on what sort of applied linguist you might be, anthropology might seem more or less relevant. So I'm going to be sharing some data in the course of this talk that is related to anthropology because that's just what I happen to have at my fingertips. I guess I would imagine that in most of the cases when we're looking at sort of national level trends of who's getting degrees and that sort of thing, that it would be similar-ish for linguistics. What little work I've done in linguistics shows that the same kind of trends seem to hold. I guess I would also say, by way of getting started, that aside from all of that quantitative work, so my background, what I studied in grad school is sociocultural linguistics. The sort of applied linguistics that I did is more about discourse analysis. And so you can look at facts and figures about how many PhDs are granted versus how many academic jobs are available. And we will look at those numbers. But really the kind of training that I have tends to encourage me to go out and talk to people. And so I had a project going about 2 years ago where I was interviewing PhD students in anthropology who were aspiring to non-academic careers, various kinds of things in business, in the government, in the nonprofit sector. And so this was in the course of a conversation. My one research participant, Sarah, said to me, yeah, we haven't really done anything, talking about what kind of support she had in her department for thinking about careers. She said, we haven't really done anything that sort of focused on applied careers. But we did we do have a colloquium that I'm partly in charge of running this semester. And somebody did kind of posit the idea of bringing students that we've had graduate and go on to work in non-academic careers. Like we have someone that works for the Park Service and a couple of people that work for museums and things like that. So, but then, then we vote for all the speakers and nobody voted to have those. Nobody would come. So that didn't happen, unfortunately. So this is the response that I expect to get from doc students. And I know from being a AAAL member that a lot of grad students in AAAL are in PhD programs. The sort of ironic thing about this is that Sarah herself was concurrently with her PhD also working on a master's degree in multivariate statistics. to make herself a good candidate for government work, knowing that you would want to be able to have mixed methods available. So even coming from a background like that, she's saying, this is a thing that students, they are not interested in. So I could, I guess, have structured this talk around, here's how you think about transferable skills coming out of a PhD program and the different kinds of jobs you might be able to get, or here's how you take your CV and turn it into a resume, and that kind of nuts and bolts. But really, I wanted to get to some more bread and butter questions, if you'll forgive me mixing metaphors. Like, why should I care about this? Why should I listen to you about it? What am I even qualified for? And what can I do about it? All of these are really understandable questions that somebody might have. And I really want to take it at this level. So I'm going to structure my talk around these questions. Really, the overarching theme is, what is this job market they speak of today? When you spend time in and around graduate schools and you hear people talk about the job market, a lot of times you get the sense that they mean jobs, academic jobs, or more specifically, tenure track assistant professorships. And I want to sort of not only get into the idea that the job market is more than that, but also think about how that can prompt specific kinds of action on the part of people who are about to find themselves in one job market or another. So to begin with, why should I care about this? Well, I'm sure that you've seen charts like this. On this chart, the red line is the number of PhDs granted in anthropology year over year. The green line is the number of jobs that have been posted on our website at the American Anthropological Association. And you can see there was a time in around 2008, 2009, where the lines cross each other and all of a sudden there are more jobs than PhDs. And if you read the Chronicle at all, you'll see endless, Chronicle of Higher Education, you'll see endless hand-wringing over, maybe we shouldn't have so many PhD students because there are no jobs for them. Well, that takes a very narrow sense of what jobs there are. I've also looked at NSF data that says that if you have for people with PhDs in anthropology, the unemployment rate is 2.5%. And so there's definitely something making up the space in between those lines on the chart. And the question is how to think about what it is, because when they say there are no jobs, really it means there are no academic jobs. Most of the jobs that we have posted on the AAA website are academic jobs. And so that's really what this sort of dual line graph is showing. What jobs there are also, it's important to remember that they are not distributed equitably. So there are about 100 anthropology departments in the United States that grant PhDs. At those 100 departments, there are about 1,900 professors who teach there. If you look at those 1,900 professors and say, where did they themselves get their degree from? The 5 most common schools that they got their degree from counts for this many of the professors. This is 5% of schools account for this percentage of faculty. 10% of schools account for this percentage of faculty. 15% looks like this. The next 70% is this orange slice here, and the bottom 15 are this red slice up here. So the number of professors who graduated, the number of professors in the yellow slice and the number of professors in the red slice represent the same number of graduate programs. Opportunities are not distributed equitably. So I'm not saying that it's too late for you and that if you didn't go to the biggest named school in existence, that it's too late for you. And you may as well, I don't know, you can finish that sentence yourself, but just that it shows that it behooves us to think of what kind of opportunities are out there. So another important thing to remember, and I know that some of my colleagues on the panel don't have their PhD. A lot of people in the audience, I imagine, are not working on a PhD. So when we say there are no jobs, well, we already said that means there are no academic jobs, but there are no academic jobs for whom? I don't have, like I said, I don't have figures for linguistics, but in anthropology, there are 2 master's degrees granted for every PhD. And that's not hundreds and hundreds of people sitting around hoping that a job will appear, right? There are things that you can do with graduate training in applied linguistics that don't involve the tenure track. So let's talk a little bit about what that might look like. And I want to talk a little bit more about my own history and how I got to this point. So this is my CV in one slide. When I finished my undergrad in 2001, I went to the School for International Training. I got my MA TESOL in 2003. I spent a couple of years working in different intensive English programs and community-based nonprofits and that sort of thing. And then in 2005, I got a fellowship, English language fellowship from the State Department. And I spent the 2005-06 academic year teaching at the University of Kragujevac in Serbia. When I came back from that, I was hoping that I would be able to find some sort of a job teaching ESOL in higher education. It turns out there's not really full-time work in that. You basically have to wait for someone to die and their job will become available. So I found work in a public high school, a unionized public high school, NEA sign there, where I taught English as a second language for 3 years. For the last 2 years, I taught math for English learners in a sheltered immersion setting. And then in 2009, we ended up moving to Washington, DC for personal reasons. and I found work at the Center for Applied Linguistics. So I spent 3 years at Cal working on the WIDA Access exam and the sister project called the WIDA Model exam, which are, if you're not familiar with them, they are large-scale standardized assessments of English language proficiency. And I did item writing and item specifications writing and a lot of the work that goes around that on the test development side. As I was working there, I started to get the sense that I would never move up in that job without another advanced credential. So in 2010, I went back to graduate school again in the linguistics department at Georgetown University. Georgetown makes you choose a track within linguistics. I was in sociolinguistics. I ended up writing a dissertation on, it was a linguistic ethnography of 2 mathematics classrooms. So drawing on my former experience teaching math to English learners. And as I was finishing, I applied for one tenure track job. I found the process to be probably the most stressful thing that I did in my entire graduate program was applying for jobs. For the one academic job that I applied for. I realized that I wanted to stay in DC. I had a spouse with a career. My son was in kindergarten when I graduated. And so I found a job that didn't require me to move. The way I found it was I was also a member of the American Anthropological Association, and I was reading one of the emails that goes out to members, and it said, we want to congratulate our postdoc, Katie. She's been working on all of these things, including career diversity, and she's found a diverse career of her own, and we wish her all the best. And I said, oh, that sounds promising. And I scrolled down to the bottom of the email, and it said, here are some highlights from our job bank. We are looking to hire a new postdoc. So I threw my hat in the ring and I got the job. And then after about 1.5 years, they converted it to regular full-time staff. And here I am. I don't want to talk a lot about what I do in that job, but if it comes up in the Q&A or if people want to email me offline, I'm glad to talk more about it. But for now, I guess I could say it has me dealing a lot with these kind of questions about how do you think about graduate degrees and the different kinds of things that they might be able to prepare you for. And so I guess if you're thinking about the kind of jobs that you might have, the question would come up, what am I even qualified for, right? So I've shared a couple of things from my own personal experience, but also I think there's a way of approaching this, and I'm drawing here on my friend Anna Marie Trester's work, where she's, in addition to being a linguist and somebody who works a lot in career counseling, she's also sort of with a different hat on involved in dramatic improv. And this one question, you might have heard like yes and in the context of dramatic improv, or another term that Anna uses for it is if that, then what? So given the opportunities that are available to me, they are what they are. I have to take them, and then I can do something with them. Similarly to if you have a scene partner on stage and they say something, and then you have to say something next. And you can't like unsay what they said, you have to take it, but then you have to do something with it. So this process of figuring out what your career is gonna be, I've heard people call it design in the sense that you try something and it doesn't work, but it kind of works and you tweak it a little bit and try something slightly different. But another framing to think about it is in terms of improvisation, right? You take what's available and you do something. And so just so it's not just me talking, I want to give an example from a friend of mine, another friend of mine. This is Mackenzie Price. She also has a PhD in linguistics. And I'm going to give her 3 minutes to talk about her own work. And please give me the high sign if you can't hear the video.
You're at a party and you can take a step back and look at 2 people having an interaction. If you can tell when they're fighting, if you can tell when they're flirting, if you can tell when they've just met each other for the first time, that's anthropology. My name is Mackenzie Price, and I'm a sociolinguist. A sociolinguist is a social scientist who's interested in the relationship between language and social life and social behavior. Frameworks Institute is a nonprofit communications think tank. We work with nonprofit organizations to pay attention to the language that they use when they're explaining their work and advocating for the pieces of policy that they want to see in place. When they are going out and talking to people about their work, when they are testifying on the Hill, when they are making communications campaigns that try to build public support. So for example, let's say you're an advocate who wants more kids to go to pre-K because you know the years before age 5 happen to be a time that the human brain is developing, it's growing really, really fast. But you also know that there's a lot of other people who say kids under 5 aren't ready for school. They're just absorbing things. We've got a communications problem. How are we going to present pre-K, some type of educational experience that happens in that 0 to 5 range, as something that's an important support for healthy brain development, something that young people or children are ready for, something that they're prepared for, that they are in fact even able to learn in this period? How do you explain all of that? Frameworks would be interested in talking to those scientists who know what's happening with the brain between 0 to 5 and figuring out how to talk about brain development in a way that more people can engage with. And we also work with that advocate who wants to talk about pre-K, who wants to talk about why it matters for brain development, but needs some strategies for explaining brain development to somebody at the post office or at a town hall meeting. We can shift away from kids just absorb things to there's a lot of brain development happening between 0 and 5. Really, you can do anything you want to do and be a linguist. Every field has a piece of it somewhere that's interested in social relationships and society, and thinking about language, how people interact with one another, is a part of that, and that's a skill that you can take with you different places. Yeah, anthropology, just like linguistics, can take you anywhere you want to go.
So I guess, I mean, if I had time, I could show a million different things that people do with degrees in linguistics. We don't, and so I'm just going to let Mackenzie and me stand in for the whole universe of things. But there's one more point that I wanted to make before I conclude, which is to think about what you can do about it. This is something that I've heard researchers from a pretty broad range of social science and humanities disciplines talk about, is that basically the skills that you have learned in your program are the same skills that you need to figure out what job opportunities are available. And so I know that I said I wasn't going to talk about transferable skills, but this is the one, is that you can really think about your career search as a research project and think about the skills that you have learned about, you know, the same way that you're doing whatever work you're doing now, you can research careers that might be available to you. So for example, if you've done linguistics, you know how to talk to people. You can talk to people from different careers that they may have had and learn about what that looks like. You know how to find patterns in things. You can take all of these little snapshots as you've got and try to see what they look like if you combine them into a bigger picture, into a bigger whole, and try to understand the scope of things in that way. And the more that you learn about it, the more you sort of come to your own personal set of findings about what your job opportunities might be. And I'm glad to talk more in the Q&A about specifically what that might look like. The more you'll come to a sense of what your path forward is and what specific steps you need to take to get there. So here are some links to things that I referred to. The slides, I guess, will be made available to you later, so you can follow up on whatever you like. And that is all from me. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ginsberg, for sharing your perspectives about career diversity and giving us some valuable tips. Let me see if I can connect to my slides. Can you see my slides? No? No?
Yes.
Okay, great. I apologize. I'm not sure what happened before. Okay. Our next presenter is Dr. Lara Hamman-Ortiz. She will discuss about the academic cover letter. Dr. Hamman-Ortiz, please share your screen and you are welcome to start your presentation.
Great, thank you. It looks like I can't share while your screen is sharing.
Share. Okay.
Okay, perfect. All right, can you all see my screen?
Yes, we can see it.
Look good? Okay, great. Wonderful. Well, thank you for having me. It's an honor to be invited to be a part of this panel, and thank you, Daniel, for sharing this beautiful overview of the skills that we acquire as we work towards a PhD in linguistics or related fields, and just how versatile a degree like that can be. I'm going to go into more of the nuts and bolts, as Daniel was saying, to kind of show you from an in some ways a linguistic perspective, what some of the tools look like. If you have decided that you want to go on the academic job market, give you some sense for what I would view as the most important tool that you can really hone and shape to present yourself and give yourself the best competitive chance you have as you go on the academic job market. And I'll talk a little bit about what this tool is and why I think it's so important. So my presentation is entitled Deconstructing the Academic Cover Letter, and I'll talk to you a little bit more about that. I'm gonna try to hide myself so I can see the slides. There we go. So what I want to do with the time that we have together is show you, spend the bulk of the time kind of breaking apart what an academic cover letter is. And the example that I'm going to be using is one that you might use for a research institution, although you certainly would want to tailor a cover letter depending on who your audience is, and we'll talk a little bit about that. I'll close with a few tips and tricks as you're thinking about your cover letter, and then a resource that I highly recommend for anyone who is approaching the job market, or even if you aren't, just a good resource to have in your back pocket. Let me see if I can click through. Okay, and before I get into it, I also wanted to just kind of give you a little bit of background into who I am and what I'm doing. So I finished my PhD from the University of Wisconsin-Madison in 2018. And in the fall of 2017, I went on the job market, and I also, like Daniel had mentioned, found it to be a fairly stressful experience since I was simultaneously writing my dissertation, and as I imagine many of you are as well. It was not just writing my dissertations. I was teaching, I was working on a research project, actually for WIDA, so we have a little bit of overlap as well from the previous presenter, but really busy, and then the job market itself felt like a full-time job. But I found it to be an enjoyable experience. I started planning early and started developing some of my job materials early. But one thing that I found frustrating was that I didn't have a lot of, I felt like I didn't know exactly what to produce when I was asked to produce different materials that for different academic positions. So what I want to spend today doing is just kind of demystifying what the cover letter is, because the cover letter, in my view, in addition to the CV, is the most important piece, the most important document that you can produce, because it's really a way to just show who you are, to introduce yourself to a search committee, and you hone what areas of yourself you want to present that they might not gather when they are kind of skimming through the CVs of the possibly hundreds of applicants that they've received. So the work that I'm doing now, so I'm currently in a postdoctoral research position at the University of Colorado-Boulder, and I'm happy to speak more about why I decided to pursue a postdoc in the Q&A. But in this position, I spend a lot of time working with systemic functional linguistics and breaking apart, helping students to strengthen their academic writing by demystifying the different genres of school. So today I'd like to help you demystify what the academic cover letter is, and I'm going to break it apart step by step. So when you're putting together a cover letter, if you're aiming for a research institution, this is kind of the breakdown that I would recommend, and the resource I'll talk about at the end is Karen Kelsky's book, The Professor is In. And so a lot of what I'm going to present draws heavily from what she's recommended, but really beginning by setting the stage with who you are, what the job is that you're applying for, who you are, and why you want that position. If it's a position that, an institution that focuses on research, you want to start with presenting your research in just 2 paragraphs. Spend a few paragraphs talking about your potential to continue to be a productive scholar, things you've already published, things you hope to publish or plan to publish, mention your teaching and the teaching experience you've had, and then wrapping up by specifically explaining why you want to be at that job or in that department.
I'm listening.
Okay. So moving into what it actually looks like. And again, I'm approaching this from the perspective of deconstructing it with you. So I'm using an example of a cover letter that I put together. I've tried to block out some of the specifics of the job, but just give you the frame. And I also, I have this document and plan to share it with my slides as well. So you have access to this afterwards as a mentor text. But when you're putting together the cover letter, the first paragraph really should set the stage for who you are, what the job is, and why you want that position. Like Daniel mentioned, there are many more people graduating with PhDs than positions, and most positions have many people applying for them. So you want to make sure that you use the cover letter strategically, that you are to the point, and that you do a lot of, and this will come up later too, but a lot of showing rather than telling. So showing the experience that you've had, as opposed to just telling that you had that experience. So in the first paragraph, you want to start by stating what the position is, and then giving a little bit about your current position. So when I was applying in 2017, I was finishing my PhD at the University of Wisconsin. You explain your focus, what you were studying, and any other kind of positions you held. So at the time, I was also an instructor with the English as a New Language program at the University of Notre Dame. So your current position, your research focus, as broad or specific as it is, but in one sentence, what you focus on in your research. And then this is really important, and it's a piece that I think sometimes is left out of cover letters, but remembering that every job will have potentially hundreds of applicants, being really specific about how you fit the particular position that's being advertised. And why this is important is because it shows to the committee that you've actually read, you've read the post, you've read what they're looking for, and you've also maybe done a little bit of digging into who that department is, and what specific strengths that they have as you begin your cover letter. So here I mentioned for this job that I'm interested in equity-oriented bilingual education, a little bit about my research experience, and I know that they prioritized university or having some teaching experience. So I mentioned that all in the first paragraph. There we go. As you move forward, if it's a research-intensive university that's hiring, you want to make sure you prioritize your research. So that should be the first thing that you talk about. As a PhD student, your big project is your dissertation. So talking in one sentence, introducing what your dissertation looked at, what you were studying. So for me, it was looking at how young emergent bilingual students experience being and becoming bilingual in two-way immersion. After introducing what it is, you want to give some hook into why this matters. So I introduced here the gap, why I was looking at this specific area, because we don't know enough about how young learners make sense of these programs. And then you want to spend just a couple sentences talking through your central findings and your argument. So in my case, I talk a little bit about my methods here, what my study found, and then a central argument that I'm making through my research. After your first paragraph, you want to spend another paragraph talking about the significance. So again, I reiterated the gap, why my research focused on students' perspectives and why that's so important. And then you want to spend some time talking about the significance of your study and significance of your research. And this, looking at it now, I can see, like, it feels very tight, but I can promise you that this was a very messy process of putting it all together. I've sent this out to many colleagues and friends to look it over, but you want to make sure to the extent that you can, to really make this concise and to the point, showing where you're contributing to whatever current debates are that you're engaging with. So that's about the first page of your cover letter. As you move into the next paragraph, you want to talk about publications, anything that you have already produced, or if you haven't published yet, things that places where you've presented. So if you've presented at AAAL, mention that. If you have a manuscript that's in progress, mention that. Because something that a lot of these, or if it's a research-intensive university, they're going to be looking to see, is this somebody, who can engage with the scholarship? Is this somebody who, if we hire, will continue to be productive? So you want to make sure that you articulate that clearly. So here I'd had one article that was published at the time that I went on the job market, and I had a chapter that was coming out. So I started with that. And then I mentioned that I had some presentations coming up on my dissertation chapters, and was specific about where I would plan to adapt the manuscripts from these presentations for publication. And again, the people who are looking at your materials know that you're a graduate student, but they also want to see that you've made some steps towards publication. And if you're earlier in your grad career and you haven't yet, I highly recommend either reaching out or talking to your advisor about a piece that you might co-author together, joining a research team if you haven't you have the opportunity to. There's a lot of ways to get some early publication experience, and I found that it made a big difference on the job market to already have had some experience going through that process. And then in the next paragraph, you want to talk about what's next. I found this to be really challenging because I was in the midst of writing my dissertation. I had just collected the research the previous year for that dissertation, and so to already think about the next project I was planning seemed a little bit removed from where I currently was situated. But it's really important to show that you have an idea, and it's okay if it's an idea of where you might go, and connect it in some way to where you've been. A lot of academic work I found is kind of crafting your own, understanding your own narrative and crafting a narrative that can shift, but making connections between what you've done and where you're headed. So I talked about continuing a project looking at bilingual identity text making as something that had been powerful in my dissertation work and something I wanted to continue to do, expanding beyond a single case study. So making that scholarly trajectory clear. And then you do want to talk about teaching, of course, because this was a research-intensive university. Teaching is closer to the end of my letter, but if this was a university that prioritized teaching, I would put this first. But I talk about my previous experiences as a K-12 teacher. All of the positions I applied for were in schools of education, so it was important to emphasize that I had taught K-12 because they often look for that experience since you'll be working with pre-service teachers. I talk about the specific courses I had taught at the University of Wisconsin-Madison and the University of Notre Dame. This job had asked or they wanted someone who had some online course experience, so I mentioned that specifically here. So that's part of tailoring to this specific audience. I talk about the different topics that I had taught, that I had covered in my teaching. And then I gave a really specific example. So I wanted to make sure I didn't just say, I really enjoy teaching my courses. I try to make my courses engaging. Hopefully those things are true for all applicants, but you want to give something specific that shows perhaps something innovative that you've done, or some way that you're making your teaching values more visible. So I talked about the linguistic case studies that my students worked on in one of the courses that I taught. So really making visible one teaching practice that I had honed and that I found really powerful in my classroom. And again, to show excellence in teaching, anything that you can actually give as evidence rather than just saying, I really work hard at teaching and I love teaching is more powerful. So talking about if you were a part of any organization that recognizes excellence in teaching, or if you have some student feedback you can share, a numeric score or a quotation from a student, I think that can make a big difference, and it does show more of who you are as a teacher. And then finally, this is a really important paragraph. You want to make sure you say why this job in this department. I had a call earlier this week with a friend of mine talking about the job market, and she said that she's been on several search committees and she's always surprised when she comes across letters where it seems like the person hasn't read the ad or doesn't know anything about the department at all, and it's really easy to write that person off from the beginning. So if you're applying to the job, and if you're applying to just several jobs, you want to make sure that each cover letter is really tailored to the specific position. So I talked a little bit about some of the leadership work or service work that I had done. Like Daniel, I had also served on the Graduate Student Council in AAAL, and so I mentioned those leadership roles, but then connect it back to the job. So I welcome new leadership roles in this department. Here's some specific contributions I hope to bring, and show that you've at least you've gone onto their website, you've looked at some of their commitments, you've maybe even researched some of the centers that they have. So in this job, I mentioned one of the centers that I would like to work with, and sometimes even mention specific people that you would collaborate with because you know that their work aligns or with some of the things that you're interested in. So really showing that you could make a difference in that department and that you've done your research. All right, and then a very short closing statement. You don't need to have a whole paragraph to say, I can't wait to hear from you. I'm really interested in this job, just something short and sweet. Okay, so that's kind of the nuts and bolts of what a cover letter looks like or could look like. And again, this isn't the only way to structure a cover letter, but it is a way that I have that I think can be really effective. This is, like I mentioned, was structured for a research institution, but if you were structuring your cover letter for an institution that was more focused on teaching, you would want to privilege and prioritize the teaching section. So you'd probably want 2 paragraphs talking about your teaching, shortening the other paragraphs, and teaching would come first. So you definitely need to tailor depending on the type of job you're applying for. And if it's a non-academic position, obviously this would look very different as well. So thinking about who your audience is when you're writing the cover letter. So kind of a summary of some of the tips and tricks of putting this together. The first is show, don't tell. So you, to the extent that you can, you always just want to give evidence of practice, of yourself as a researcher, of yourself as a teacher, as opposed to just stating something about who you are. It's always better to have some evidence to back that up. Tailoring the cover letter is so important. So making sure that the cover letter is not something that you just send out to all jobs and departments, but that you've read, you've gone on to, at the very minimum, you've gone onto the department's website, you've read the job description carefully, and that you've made some adjustments to your cover letter based on the specific needs of that department, or the specific things that you've learned from reaching out and learning a little bit more about that job in that department. Cover letters should always be it should be formal. Use university letterhead. You can even just like copy and paste your university logo to the top of a Word document, but make sure it's a formal letter. This is kind of an example of the formal, even though most cover letters are not mailed. I only had one job I applied to that actually had me mail in my materials. You still include the address or the department in the top and write it as a formal cover letter. And also start early and seek out as much critical feedback as you can get. The version of the cover letter that I'm sharing with you today has gone through many iterations. Once I had a really good working document, then I was able to just tailor it and send it to a lot of different jobs. I actually applied to over 20 positions. So kind of on the opposite end of what Daniel was sharing, because I wanted to see what was out there and give myself a fighting chance the first time around. And I'm going on the job market again this year. So I'm using these same tools and tailoring once again because my position is different and my narrative has shifted slightly as well. So knowing that, you know, it's always an iterative process, but the earlier you can start and getting that critical feedback is so important as you begin to really hone what it is you want to say. And this, I can't say enough good things about this book. The Professor is In by Karen Kelsky is an incredible resource. She breaks down the cover letter as well. I used a lot of her suggestions and her tips when I was putting together mine. But if you don't already own this book, I highly recommend it for anyone who's going into the job market, or even if you're in your the earlier stage of your career, of your PhD career. It's definitely a useful text to have. And yeah, I'll save the rest for questions. Thank you.
Much, Dr. Hamman-Ortiz, for discussing the academic cover letter. Now we are going to ask Ms. Katlyn Thomas to talk about marketing yourself for non-academic opportunities and the curriculum vitae. Dr. Thomas?
Okay, I'm here. Yes, can everyone hear me? Okay, great. So I am going to start sharing my screen. All right, here we go. Okay, I know there might be some individuals out there with some individual needs, so I hope it's okay if I include subtitles at the bottom of my presentation. I hope that's not too distracting for some of you. So as it was said, I'm Katlyn Thomas, but everyone calls me Katie. So if you feel the need to contact me after this webinar, just feel free to address me as Katie. That's okay. Just a brief thank you to Dr. Ginsberg and Dr. Hamman-Ortiz. Those were some really high quality practical tips for postgraduates. So that was really wonderful. Thank you for that information. That was helpful to me. So yeah, definitely thank you for that. Just a little reminder about my bio. So my name is Katlyn Thomas. I graduated with my master's degree from Kent State University wow, it was only 4 months ago in May. So I am fresh out of graduation here. I'm still stabilizing my feet in the post-grad world. So yeah, this presentation I think is generally for people who are just emerging out of their master's degree. Maybe you want to pursue a PhD, or maybe you aren't sure, or maybe you want to teach first and then push your PhD a little further into the future. This presentation might be particularly helpful to you. Currently, I am a sole proprietor, curriculum coordinator, and instructor for a company called Langscape. I just created this company right after I graduated, and it's very much not something I ever thought I would do, but I'll talk a little bit more about it later in the presentation. I'm also currently a curriculum coordinator for Elite Educational Institute, which is a private school in Bandung, Indonesia. So I'm coming to you from Bandung, Indonesia, and here it is 4:15 in the morning. So my slides are really bright and a little interactive, mainly intentionally so I can stay alert while I'm giving this presentation, but also just for fun. So let's get to it. So this is a great gift to describe how I felt after graduating. I really didn't know what I was doing. I had a job lined up, which is great. I was really thankful for that, but I also wasn't completely sure what that job would look like, and the transition just from graduating to that job was a little intimidating. But now I'm I'm in a whole different stage of life. I have different things going on in different areas, and I love it. It's a really busy and chaotic time, but it's wonderful. So here is what led to the busy and wonderful life that I'm living now. There are three main things. So I'll talk specifically about two of them, but one very important factor that led to the careers that I have now includes making connections at conferences and through colleagues. So the job that I have in Indonesia, I was able to obtain this job through a connection that I had. An Indonesian friend of mine had a friend who is the director of a school here in Bandung, Indonesia. So I got in contact with him, and he needed some teachers. And so I was able to secure that job just through that connection, through that friend that I had. But conferences are definitely great in multiple ways. Not only can you learn a lot of skills that develop your professionalism and your repertoire of teaching materials and things like that, but it's a great way to make connections so that you can just expand your career and expand your I don't know, just expand your view of the linguistics field. So definitely recommend those conferences. I'm seeing some things going on in the chat here, so I just want to make sure there's nothing for me. Please enlarge your screen. Is my screen looking okay to everyone, or are there some issues? Give me like a thumbs up if everything looks okay. Yes, okay, good. Okay, good. Thank you. I just wanted to make sure before I went further that everything looked all right. Okay, so going on to the next bullet here, tailoring your CV to employers' expectations. So that's specifically what I'm going to talk about in a sense of practicality today. What to include in your CV and how to organize the information. And then also pursuing multiple options. This is more of a career-minded session, if you will. So I'll talk not only about your CV, but also about what to do if you're in a place of, I don't know where to go from here. So those are the two main points that I'm gonna talk about during the rest of my time here. So first, tailoring your CV. Consistency is key. I took a great class with Dr. Ryan Miller at Kent State during my master's, who taught a class called Methodologies of Teaching. And we actually spent a lot of time working on our CVs in this class. And it was really an awesome way to learn that consistency is a really important thing. Formatting, style, terms that you use for different types of work, grammar, consistency is 100% important to employers. If they can see that you're consistent in your CV, odds are you'll be consistent in your work ethic, in just your focus, a lot of other things. So on a practical note, if you choose a theme, like say you're using Microsoft Word or even another program like Pages or something, themes are good, or templates. Half the time. I recommend them with caution. Sometimes they're pretty good in terms of consistency visually, and sometimes they're just a pain to fiddle with, and you want to fit more information in a box than it allows you to. So I say use, definitely use those templates with caution. I have a template that I used, but I kind of modified it. So just remember, consistency is key, and I think you'll be able to fiddle with it enough to make it work. Also utilize subheading. So remember, your potential employer is reading maybe dozens of CVs, depending on how many people are applying. So you want to make it as easy and efficient for them to read as possible. Using subheadings, bolding some categories, that's really helpful for them, because they can skim your CV and decide what they're specifically looking for, and then find that in your CV. So that's really helpful. You can also underline your subheadings. That works too. I use both in my CV for different purposes, but again, as long as you're using consistency in those subheadings, they make it a lot more enjoyable for your potential employer to read. Don't be too lazy to customize your CV for different positions. When we were moving to Indonesia, my husband just knew he was looking for a position in the financial industry, but he had a couple different jobs to choose from. One was a CFO of the international school down the street from us, and one was just a financial advisor at another company. And so he knew that he needed to emphasize different types of work for those two different positions. So use different vocabulary that emphasize the skills that you used for the different experiences that you had. Okay, and then I wanted to give you an idea of what my CV looks like. So I'm going to share that with you here. Maybe that'll help you. This CV will be made available to you through the slides at the end of this webinar. So don't worry if you want to go back and look at it again later. So yeah, as I said, I have some underlined subheadings here and some bold. It just depends on, the functionality of your CV. I always heard that you should have your name right in the center so they can see it really easily. Yeah, list your education, honors and awards, your teaching experience. If you are going into a PhD program, you'll definitely want to include presentations and invited lectures, and perhaps if you're coming out of your PhD program, absolutely include your research experience and different studies that you've done in the past and published. I included significant coursework that I modify for different jobs that I was applying to. If I was applying for jobs that worked with teaching children, I would include for sure this child second language acquisition class, for example. So definitely modify your significant coursework to what you think your employer is looking for and what kind of information you think they would want you to understand really well. One more thing, I wanted to include a link to my teaching portfolio for anyone who is specifically looking to go into teaching and not a PhD program right away. So I won't go through the whole teaching portfolio, but I will give you a look at my table of contents here so you can see what I included in my teaching portfolio. Your CV, philosophy of teaching. I decided to include my unofficial transcript. If you can easily have access to your official transcript, by all means, include that. I included 2 lesson plans. Both have a rationale and the materials along with those lesson plans. And then finally, I have 1 research study that I did during my master's program. I like to say that I'm a researcher 100%, but I enjoy teaching first and foremost. So I put all of my teaching stuff at the beginning, but a little bit of research at the end so that my employer knows that I do classroom research on a regular basis. Okay, so just in a sense of career preparation, these are some of the things that I had in mind when I was graduating. I kind of had 3 specific tracks. So my main work right now, I am a curriculum coordinator for Elite Educational Institute in Bandung, Indonesia. So I have a main job. This is what a lot of people would call their full-time job. I teach TOEFL and SAT preparatory counseling for students who want to attend universities in English-speaking countries like Australia and the United States mostly. I also have a track that I call my leap of faith work. So as I said earlier, I founded a company called Landscape, and this was a total leap of faith for me. I'm not business minded at all, and I've had a lot of help from a lot of friends and loved ones. But I just decided, you know what, I really want to have some big goals, and I have this idea that I just think would be marketable. And so I want to try it. And so Landscape is a company that is specifically for the teaching of English via online one-on-one meetings. And it specializes in teaching English to adopted children from non-English speaking countries. So the kids are adopted into their American families or their Australian families, and the families hire me to teach the kids. And it's a great family experience. The siblings of the children, you know, they help too, and the parents of the children help too. It's really awesome. I love what I do, and this business is growing, and I'm very thankful for that. So if that's something for you, have this leap of faith work where you just kind of take it and run with it. If it doesn't work, who cares? You have your main work, and you might have a side hustle like me. My side hustle is working for a company called GoGo Kid, and GoGo Kid is for teaching EFL to Chinese children via online one-on-one meetings. You might have heard of VIP Kid. This company is pretty much identical to that. That's pretty much all I have for you. So if you would like my contact information, if you have any questions for me privately after this webinar, go ahead and feel free, take a picture of this slide, and I'd be happy to connect with you via email or WhatsApp or whatever you want after this webinar. So I think that's it for me, and we can move on to the next panelist. Thank you.
Much, Ms. Thomas, for talking about marketing yourself for non-academic opportunities, job opportunities. Our next panelist is Dr. Bedrettin Yazan. He will talk about job interviews and campus visits as an international candidate.
Hello, everyone. First of all, thank you very much to AAAL Graduate Student Council, and thank you so much to all the presenters. I really enjoyed every one of the presentations so far. It was great. Let me share my screen real quick. Does it look good and sound good? Okay. All right. So I'm going to talk about the job interview, meaning the campus interview. And it's gonna include the job talk and meeting with search committee members and meeting with faculty either during meals or otherwise if they have organized any other meetings for you to meet with the other faculty. And meeting with grad students, these are the main components in a campus visit. Although you're gonna meet with the department head, you're gonna meet with the college dean, but most of the time you're going to spend like specifically your job talk and meeting with the search committee, faculty, and grad students. Again, you know, I wanted to like highlight that this is for the research institute or research institution job interview. If it's a teaching job, it could be really, I mean, a little bit different. In, you know, it might include one more teaching presentation. Which, you know, here in my institution, I didn't do that, and I've never had such a job interview. I don't have much experience to talk about that. But on top of the job talk, like a research talk, you may have to do a teaching demo or some micro teaching. And lastly, I'm going to talk about my experience as an international candidate when I was looking for a job. And first of all, like, please remember that you are also interviewing your whoever university that you're applying to, whoever the faculty are or the program is that you are interviewing them to. They want you to like them, right? So keep that in mind, please. And they want you to have a nice interview experience. And like, if you are there at this point, it means you have impressed them so far. Like, you have gone through a really stressful and rigorous process of the job search. And make sure that they know you have done your homework. Like the earlier presenters, they mentioned like going there to their website and making sure that you know everything about the program, like whatever is presented on their website, and getting to know the people that you are going to meet and how you are going to fit in this program. You know, you're going to think about it while you're writing your cover letter, but later on, after you get the invitation for the campus visit, I would recommend you do more research of the program and the faculty you're going to be working with. But first of all, like, after you get the invitation to visit the campus, they are going to provide you an itinerary, and this itinerary will include a timeline for you to follow, like who is going to pick you from the airport, who is going to take you to the hotel, who is gonna, you know, take you from the hotel for breakfast, and then who's gonna take you to the job talk. The entire process is planned by the search committee, and either the search committee chair or somebody from their administrative assistants is going to contact you via email, most probably, and they're gonna provide you an itinerary, and you can always ask your questions to that person. And the most important part of the visit is the job talk. And I would recommend that, you know, you just make sure that you're prepared for that. And I've got a few recommendations, and you can always, you know, ask your PhD advisor or whoever is in your program who has experience looking for jobs, that, you know, I'm sure they're going to be more than happy to help. One thing that I have seen, you know, over a couple of years that we have a few searches going on in our faculty, like in our college. And a couple of times I noticed the candidates exceeding the time limit, and I looked at the audience, and I noticed they were getting, you know, nervous, or, you know, it's like one thing that I would recommend you should be really careful and just try your best not to exceed the time limit. If it's 45 minutes, it's 45 minutes. You know, don't go over that, because they planned everything for one day, and they want to move on and make sure that they have time for the questions, which is my next point. Is please make sure they have time for the questions, and because the fact that they're asking questions means that they're interested and they want to ask you questions, because, you know, you're interviewing and they want to see. They will always have questions. In some cases, I remember even the dean asking a question. It's not so usual, the dean attending one of the job talks, but one of them, you know, I saw him and he was interested and he was, you know, asking questions. Next one, please make sure you rehearse multiple times before the visit. Like, this could be with your program faculty, this could be with your fellow PhD friends, and in some cases, even rehearsing with people who have no idea about your work could also be important, because they can see, you know, things that your colleagues wouldn't, like acronyms, like sometimes color of your slides, which would look really good on your computer, but they wouldn't look really nice. I mean, there might be some light issues in the, when you project them in the room. Perhaps you just go try in one of the rooms in your, or classrooms in your building, in your PhD program. That would work. But like, rehearse for all the slides and rehearse for the time, and expect questions and what questions they might ask you. It's always, you know, it's always nice to have some people to do some mock rehearsals or mock, you know, job talk sessions with people. And one thing that I would start with is like framing your research identity to begin with. So in many cases, job talk should involve some, you know, research of yours, and you need to explain like a, you know, conference presentation. This is usually the dissertation research if you are if you're graduating from your program. And in addition to that, I would recommend you provide your audience what you have done other than your dissertation, what other research projects you have been involved with. This doesn't necessarily, you know, like maybe one or two more research interests you can include in the first like slide, and to show people like in a visual way, like what else you are interested in. And I would recommend you put some like different strands of research you are interested in and you have engaged so far, and perhaps just providing some publications or presentations like under those headings of research or strands of research, and dissertation research could be one of them. And then you start, as you proceed, you can focus on your dissertation research only. This could be, I mean, those publications or presentations, they could be like published or under review, or like even the accepted research presentations that you haven't done yet, but it's there, like just to show people that you have research agenda moving on, and you are a promising researcher, and you have you know, multiple research interests that could be a good contribution to the program and to the field in general. And like when you are preparing your research presentation, before you do that, you will have looked at the program and you know the faculty, you know whether or not you are a good fit for the program. Then I would recommend you frame your research, perhaps like if there are implications, frame those implications that are aligned with the job position or the program itself. Like Lara mentioned, K through 12 programs. If you're applying to one of those you know, programs in a college of education, you may want to highlight how your research is addressing that aspect of education, and prepare for the audience from campus. Imagine you're going to a campus visit, and there are other departments, like if you're going to present your job talk in College of Education, but there is an MA-TESOL program in Department of English, or there's a linguistics program in modern languages, you might have some audience from those departments, and just be prepared for them. And again, prepare for potential questions. This, you know, you can just write down and rehearse and to answer those questions. And you can ask your peers or your professors in your current PhD program who could, or some critical friends who could have some questions for you to prepare some potential questions. And like, you know, this is another thing that I noticed, I might be doing that too, like stay on topic when answering questions. It's really important. You don't want to go like digress from the answer. They might expect you to stay on topic and answer the question, and then, you know, finish it so they can ask more questions. But, you know, don't feel like you have to like rush it. And meeting with the search committee, that you will have at least one meeting with only the search committee members, usually 4 or 5 people, maybe 6, depending on the position. And they might be coming from different programs, and search committee chair is usually an associate professor or a full professor. And again, prepare for potential questions. And I think there is this list of questions which I have received from one of my professors when I was in the PhD program. And I think, you know, it's circulating in the circles of AAAL people. And I'm sure if you have, you know, seen any of those questions, because there's a like list of questions for the Skype interview or Zoom interview, list of questions for like a campus visit, list of questions for the search committee. So prepare yourself for those questions. And then other presenters mentioned that already, like get to know everybody on the committee. Just go to their website and see what they have published recently. And if you want, you can just read at least the abstracts of their recent publications so you know their research, and then make sure they know you know, right? To impress them that you have done your research and your homework. and you want to signal them that you are a good fit for the program and you are collegial and you want to work with them. If there is any, I think Lara mentioned, if there is anyone that you want to do research further, just mention that if you want in this search committee meeting. And that one thing that really, I remember people asking. So I had copies of my CV and my recent publications and syllabi that I taught. So when somebody asks about a course, sometimes it could take too long to tell, but after just giving them the elevator speech of the course I'm teaching, I also provided, syllabi of the courses, or if they needed the recent publications that they're interested, I would just give them some. And I had, multiple copies in my bag, just, took it and then provided that. And I've seen people do that too. It's really, it helps. And always just have your questions to ask them, because they're going to provide you for always, that, in interviews, you will have some time to ask the search committee some questions, and at least 2-3 questions ready to ask them. And you can ask multiple, you can ask the same question multiple times in different meetings, right? That's also, possible. And next one, like meeting with faculty. Again, this could be over dinner, lunch, breakfast, or otherwise, they could, gather in a meeting and they can meet with you. Again, they're going to ask, some questions. They're going to ask about your research. They're going to ask about your teaching. They're going to ask about how you learned about the position and how you think you're going to be part of the program. So there are questions that everybody is asking. So like preparing for those questions is going to help you, and like reduce the stress level at least while you're there, and get to know everybody you'll meet just beforehand. And also while you are meeting with them, just you can ask what they do, what research they do. Like I would recommend, you ask a lot of questions and show interest that they, you are interested in the program, you're interested in working with them, you're interested in becoming one of the colleagues in the same program. And, but beforehand, just go to their website and see what they have done recently. And again, same thing as before, just have copies of your CV, recent publications, and syllabi. In case they want to learn more about one amazing course you recently taught, just give them the syllabi so they can see the assignments in there. And then again, for those folks as well, like have your questions ready to ask them always, like multiple questions about the program, about the city. Here in my program, people love talking about the city, and like the university in general, the college in general, and the state in general, like state policies and everything. If you want to learn more about that, in my position, it was important. It was important to see how state has policies or doesn't have policies for ESL. And meeting with the grad students, it's probably not as stressful as the other meetings, but still, you want to prepare for their questions they might ask you. Like you can ask them to introduce themselves. If you don't have any, information you can find online about the grad students, you can ask them, what they are interested in, what their, dissertation is about, what stage they are at their, PhD program, and what courses they are taking. Again, get to know everybody. And if they are interested in, your publications, your CV, or your syllabi, just give them, provide the copies. They would love to, receive some, and that could create some rapport. And then always ask him questions about, like in my experience, grad students took me to, on a tour, the campus tour. It was nice to have some, low-key conversation with them walking in the campus, and they told me about different buildings, and it was nice to have such, communication with the grad students. And if you have any questions to ask, to see how the program looks from their perspective. And also remember that you are also interviewing the program. It's not that they are interviewing you. They want you to like the program. They want you to like the job. They want you to want to become one of their colleagues. And this is the tricky part. So I would write a paper on that. It's because it's interesting to be an international candidate completing your PhD and looking for jobs. There are a few additional challenges. I'm not going to get into that much because I don't have much time. And also one thing that a couple of things that I would recommend here. So if you are considering applying to a program, just see online if they have recently hired any faculty with international experience. They could just give you some idea regarding how much like internationalization they support, or whether or not they're open to hiring international faculty. And same with the students, see if they have recently recruited any students, grad students, or with international experience. They could also give you some idea. And use your opportunities during the visit, and earlier, to just tell them, to highlight your experience and how you can further contribute to the program as an international faculty. Because I remember one of the search committee members asked me specifically how my international background will be able to contribute to the program. That was a very specific question that I had the opportunity to tell them through that question, because I wasn't ready specifically for that question. But the most important one, which you will see in the job postings and everything, most of the time the positions, especially if they're in the College of Education or colleges of education, they might require some prior teaching experience, K-12 teaching experience. This could, raise the question of context. Does, the candidate know the context well, or teaching context and working with the schools and working with the teachers who are going to be serving English language learners? That prior teaching experience, do not be apprehended of applying. Just even if they require teaching experience, and if your teaching experience is not in the US, let's say if it's in your home country, just make sure you still apply, because they don't mention that you have to have teaching experience in the US only. You can highlight your teaching experience in another country internationally, either your home country or some other country overseas, to connect your experience with your future work. And they want to hire you because if you are at this point, they do not discredit your being an international scholar. So do not feel any additional pressure because you're an international scholar, right? Because you had been there. You got to that point, and they know you. They looked at your CV. They did the Skype interview or Zoom interview. So they are having you on campus. So you're good to go, right? So just be yourself and be comfortable highlighting all your teaching experience and how your earlier experiences are going to be an asset for your future program. And lastly, enjoy being the star of the day, because you are the star of the day. If you have got to this point, and I know it's going to be stressful and full day, it's just very nerve-wracking and emotional roller coaster, perhaps, just going to different meetings, talking to a lot of different people, and very dense. But also, everybody is in the program is expecting to see you. They want to greet you, they want to welcome you. So you're going to be the star of the day, and just enjoy that. And lastly, thank you very much again for having me on this panel. And if you've got any questions, you can email me, and I'd be happy to be of more help. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bedrettin Yazan. Let me see if I can do a screen share with you. Please let me know if you can see the screen. Yeah, okay. Let me see if I can do the slideshow. Okay, so thank you to all the panelists to offer your insights about academic and non-academic job search, with specific focus on career diversity, professional branding, job interviews, campus visits, and diverse job documents. I am also grateful to the organizers for planning this professional development event and facilitating the chat. And special thanks to the audience for asking questions. So moving to the questions, I am going to ask Dr. Daniel Ginsberg, what are the best websites to use when searching for jobs in linguistics?
LinkedIn.
What are the best websites to use
Yeah.
when searching?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, no, my first thought was LinkedIn. Because so I guess I'm thinking about how I can respond to that. It depends on what kind of job you want, right? Academic jobs tend to be posted in specific places that are, there's a lot about academic jobs that is distinct from other kinds of jobs in terms of the application process. Like most jobs don't require you to provide so many documents, and it would be ridiculous in any other industry to ask someone to write a letter of reference for someone as part of an initial application. And so just a part of this sort of unusualness of academic jobs is that they don't tend to be listed in the same place as everything else. So I said LinkedIn really because for me now, as somebody who's not actively on the job market, I feel like it's still good to be aware of opportunities that are available. And I do get relevant things a lot of the time through LinkedIn. They're not jobs that require a background in linguistics, but they are jobs that a background in linguistics qualifies you for. So it could be something like, especially for people in applied linguistics, there's a lot of nonprofit jobs in education research, for example, that I see coming through on LinkedIn because I have those kind of keywords in my profile. So if you have the right keywords in your profile, people will post jobs and they email you every week and it comes up. If you're looking for academic jobs, there are entirely other sites that you would go on, maybe something like Linguist List, or I'm not sure which of the professional associations, AAAL or maybe the LSA would have like a job board that schools would pay to post faculty openings on. But I feel like they're like two processes that if you're interested in different sorts of careers, including but not limited to academic, that you need to sort of have two parallel searches going on. They require separate sets of websites as well as separate networking opportunities that you would need to take advantage of and different sorts of mentoring that you would need to walk you through the process.
Can I jump in too, Andrea?
Yeah.
I think Daniel's exactly right that it depends on the type of position you're looking for. And I do think that listservs are really helpful. So for example, the Literacy Research Association, AERA, if you're a member of specific interest groups, you'll get job announcements that way. And that's through the AERA Bilingual Education Research SIG is where I get where I see most of the job postings. But more broadly, you can look at Chronicle Vitae, they post jobs, and higheredjobs.com are two places where you see a lot of job postings.
And AERA is one exception that does tend to have a fair number of nonprofit and government jobs alongside of academic jobs.
Thank you. We have another question, and this is for Dr. Hamman-Ortiz. How do we balance between formulaic, genre-specific phrases versus sounding unique in our academic cover letter?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, so what I found for the cover letter is it was helpful to have some of the formulaic phrases just to kind of structure my thinking and structure the way I wanted to present myself. But I think what really becomes unique is what you're putting, the content that you're putting into that structure. I found it helpful to have, like I mentioned, the book that I used, Karen Kelsky's text, to kind of help me think about what should fit in each paragraph. But you'll really make it your own when you fill in what it is that's unique to you and unique to the way that you fit that position. And I noticed that someone had commented in the chat too, and maybe this is another question that'll come up, but someone had asked about like, how do you balance what the department already has and what you're bringing. And I think it's really important to present yourself as someone unique. Usually departments aren't seeking someone to fill exactly what they already have. They want new perspectives. They want what's articulated in the job posting. They want to make sure that there's someone new coming in. But I think it's a balance between really showing that you know the department and you fit within kind of the general vibe is the word that's coming, but that's not, if the department focuses on equity, you focus on equity in your work, but that you're someone who's bringing something new to the table. But I think it's okay to use formulaic phrasing as long as you're, presenting who you are through that phrasing.
Thank you. And now we have a more general question, so feel free to jump in, any of the panelists. I'd like to know more about postdocs if we have time to talk about it. So,
I can speak to that, but I welcome other people jumping in too. So I'm in a postdoc. I think that postdocs are really different. So every postdoc position is not, postdoc positions will look different depending on the institution and depending on the specific purpose. So the one that I'm working within at the University of Colorado was a postdoc position that was specifically looking for someone to begin working collaboratively with the faculty member on a project. Many postdocs are kind of open-ended and you would do your own research or you would spend that time writing. So it kind of depends. But this particular position interested me because it was someone I wanted to have some experience working with. It was around systemic functional linguistics, which was a topic that had interested me in my teaching, but I hadn't done any research around it. And it involved quite a bit of grant writing, which is something that I didn't have the experience to work on as a doc student. And when I went on the job market, that was something that came up quite a bit, is how are you bringing in external funding? And it was a skill that I wanted to hone a bit more before moving into a faculty position. But again, I think it just depends on the postdoc position itself.
I think it's a great point that when you're going into a postdoc position, it's kind of in a similar way to what doc school also is. It's like part a job and part a learning experience for you, right? Ostensibly. The idea is that you're not faculty because you're supposed to be learning something from it. And I think it's important to go in, not just being like, this is my foot in the door and then they'll love me and take me on as full-time faculty, because that's kind of magical thinking. But really more to say, these are the people that I want to learn from. These are the things that I want to learn from it. So I did, the job that I had out of grad school, being a postdoc at a nonprofit, I've never heard of anything else like that. I think that's just because of some bizarre quirk of the organizational history. But I did write a grant for a more traditional postdoc. And what I was thinking of with that one was, it was in an education program that sat between education and the physics department. And so for me, having written my thesis on classroom discourse and mathematics instruction, thinking specifically about learning sciences and discipline-based education research, and thinking that, it was sort of a complementary fit between us, where the idea was that my specific expertise in discourse analysis was something that they were lacking, but also I hadn't really worked in this more explicit, like my advisor's an anthropologist and we didn't really talk about doing interventions because that's not the way that we did research. And so I had clear ideas going into it of why I wanted to work there and what I wanted to learn from them.
Thank you. And our final question is to Ms. Thomas. How do we make ourselves sound like we fit in with the department, but we are also unique and would bring in a new perspective? It seems like a balancing act, and I wonder which is more important, bringing a unique perspective versus fitting in with the existing department.
Yes, that's a great question. And I think the key term you used there was balance. So I think it's really important to have an idea of the department that you're applying to. Like, you have done your research, like some of the other panelists had said, exactly what they're experts in. You've read their research, you know what they've written, you know what they've published, just so you have an idea of what you can talk about in regards to your familiarity with the department. But also, like you were saying, I think having a sense of individuality is really what markets you. So trying to find connections between your interests and your expertise and the kind of research you plan to do, and making connections. So like I have some interest, just like Dr. Hamman-Ortiz, I have some interest in systemic functional linguistics. And I am looking forward to applying to some second language writing specific departments in the future. So obviously there's like a clear line of connection there, right? But let's say I also have an interest in applying at a department where maybe it's not writing specific, but maybe it's like English for specific purposes. I can still use that systemic functional linguistics and connect it to that English for specific purposes department by explaining like, okay, here's my research and here's what I do. And here's how it can benefit your department. Even though you're not familiar with it, I know enough that I can explain to you how it can benefit this department. So I think, yeah, just summarizing, knowing the department you're applying to and doing your research and knowing exactly how your research and your interests can benefit that department and support it even more.
I apologize if we can't get to all the questions given the time frame that we have for this webinar. You are more than welcome to email the panelists your questions if you have further questions. And now, let me see if I can share my screen again. Does it work? Yeah? Yeah, okay. We are at the end of our webinar. Thank you for attending the AAAL GSC webinar, Diverse Pathways in Applied Linguistics, Preparing for the Job Market. Big thanks to the panelists who devoted their time and expertise to join us. And I'm also very grateful to the webinar organizers. I want to thank everybody once again to participating in this webinar. We hope that it is a valuable experience for you. We will upload the video and the slides to our website within a couple of days, and we will let you know through our social media channels when the content will be available. Before we end the webinar, I would like to remind you once again to complete our survey, and your feedback will help us decide on future webinars. And I will also like to remind you about our next webinar in November about navigating the academia as a minority scholar. If you would like to offer a suggestion for the upcoming webinar, please feel to reach out via email or social media. And finally, we hope to see you at 2020 AAAL conference and in our future webinars. Thanks. Bye.